Well, this is the presentation I did, and I said Mayor Crum, County Commissioners, and other residents of Greene County. I think it's important to include everybody. To the Commissioners who voted against the wheel tax increase, thank you for living up to your oath of office. To the rest of you who voted for the increase, you have failed the taxpayers. Is it not obvious that the county as a whole does not want higher taxes? Do you forget that you work for the citizens of Greene County, not the other way around? Do you forget that it is our money that you are trying to spend? I submit to you that no taxes should be increased until this commission has done everything you can to reduce spending before you come back to our purses for more money. You have a moral and ethical responsibility to work for the benefit of everyone in this county, not just those you believe who should benefit. According to the County Government Handbook, you work for all taxpayers, not just county employees. Before anyone on this commission considers any further increase of any tax, you should be able to competently answer every one of the following questions for the taxpayers. How much has the Highway Department saved in the past year as a result of declining gas prices? Are the savings reflected in a decrease of funding, or at least as a future offset to expenditures? If not, why not? Where are the alleged savings that the asphalt plant promised to Greene County? Why isn't there a transparent accounting of that operation, comparing it line by line to previous years so the taxpayers can see any savings? Don't tell me you have saved, show me. How much money has been saved over the past 10 years with the web-based data processing service added to the Register of Deeds office? Why has this commission added $30,000 to the Register's budget for that data processing service without decreasing any personnel costs or positions accordingly? Doesn't the data processing service save money for the county? If not, then why are we still paying for it? How many years since 2010 has the Greene County student enrollment decreased? I will tell you. Every year enrollment has declined since 2010, with a total decrease of more than 300 students in grades K through 12. How many of those years has this commission decreased local funding for the county school system due to the decline in enrollment, which is one of the legal exceptions to the maintenance of effort requirements? The enrollment decrease equates to more than $750,000 at a revenue per pupil cost average over the 5 years. If there has been no decrease in local funding due to declining enrollment, why not? Where has all that money been spent? Why are we spending more than $1,000 per teacher in the Greene County elementary schools to send teachers to the Robert Park School in Atlanta, Georgia, just to observe a model school system when it can be observed through satellite TV and web? Are we negotiating higher deductibles and copays for the county employee health benefits instead of funding an estimated increase of $666,000? Why are we paying overtime in the county attorney's office when those positions should be classified as Fair Labor Standards Act exempt? Why are we paying for additional legal services above the cost of the county attorney's salary and then asking for a departmental increase of more than 10% for next year? How many revenue-generating transactions are performed daily in each of the service departments? How many non-revenue-generating transactions are performed daily in each of the service departments? How many of the transactions can be streamlined or eliminated? What are the peak hours and days for service use? What incentives are in place to increase productivity and eliminate waste? How do we incentivize our employees to identify and take cost-cutting measures? How is the performance of each employee objectively evaluated and rated? Is the productivity of our employees held to a standard of efficiency? If not, why not? What is the schedule of raises, bonuses, and other salary and wages paid in the past 5 years? Who received them and for what reasons? I dare say there isn't one person on this commission who can answer all of those questions definitively. Here is what must happen now to every county service department that employs more than one employee, except for the sheriff's department, the courts, and the schools. Conduct a complete workload analysis of every task and position and determine proper staffing for the department. The analysis must be conducted by an organization outside the county and preferably outside the state, with no relationship, personal or professional, to anyone employed by the county or the city or related thereto, and adjust all departments accordingly. Determine what services provided are not inherently governmental, and determine whether those services can be performed for less cost by contracting them out. It is unacceptable for a department officer to come to this commission without objective justification for every line item on the budget, determined by a thorough and objective workload and staffing analysis. Moreover, it's fiscally irresponsible for this commission to approve a budget without extensive objective justification. Under your oath, you owe a level of fidelity to the taxpayers in this county. Commissioning the county's budget is a serious obligation and a business decision. It is not a charity. It is not about protecting jobs or pleasing certain people. No commissioner should blindly fund what a department head requests, or vote yes to tax increases because they don't want anyone to lose hours, or a raise, or a bonus, or worse, a job. You folks need to get serious about the strain that continued tax increases are putting on the people in this county. This is a business, not about personal preferences. Before anyone on this commission votes to increase any tax, you have an obligation to consider implementing every suggestion you receive from taxpayers of this county. I offer you these. Eliminate the $167,000 appropriated to the Greeneville-Greene County Partnership now and in future years. The partnership has declared publicly in court documents that it is in no way a government agency. If it is as it claims to be, then it is not entitled to our tax dollars. Eliminate the $55,000 of funding to recreational programs and implement user fees to support those programs. Let businesses and/or non-profit organizations sponsor teams and assist those who cannot pay. Eliminate $714,000 of scheduled overtime from the emergency medical services and hire supplemental staff. Adjust wages in line with the EMS wages of similarly sized cities and contract out the entire service. This could be a savings of approximately $357,000 overall. Eliminate $120,000 appropriated to Greeneville-Greene County 911. If this endangers their budget, encourage them to combine with other counties to save money and eliminate duplication of effort and equipment. Reduce the equivalent funding of 1 hour per week per employee for all full-time county employees, except the Sheriff's Department essential personnel, the courts, and the schools. A conservative estimate would be an overall savings of $328,000. Increase co-pays and deductibles for all members covered by county health insurance program to a level that will result in no increase in cost for the upcoming 2015-16 budget. Saving estimated based on the projected increase in the proposed budget by the Budget Committee of $666,000 savings. And this is not included in my summary below. The proposed saving from the specifically described items of 1 through 5, not including the $666,000 for the health benefits, is $1,027,000. And I hope you will seriously consider what I have said and what I propose tonight. If I can find more than $1 million in cuts, then clearly you all can do the same. Thank you for your time.
Wow, pretty powerful. Now,
I'm smiling. I'm just sitting over here, so just like I was saying.
I've been trying to get a feel on a comment that Mary had made, and she would not mention. She made the comment to me that one of the commissioners stopped you and said, "Would you read that again?"
Yes.
Okay. Now,
The one that sat
3
next to me and had
Oh.
twitches.
who was that one?
It was Hilton Say.
Okay. How many years has he been a commissioner? Do you know?
Long time.
Now, was he twitching and wanting you to stop and reread it again so he could twitch more, or was he trying to get your message that maybe he had tried to get across to them? Is where I was trying to.
Yeah, no.
I went in. For the first time, I went in giving him the benefit of the doubt with my thought process.
Sure.
Okay. That is very uncharacteristic of me, but I did that, and I want to understand the facts and your perception so I can
Well, my
help
first,
with my further investigation into this.
I was somewhat like you. The first, when he first jumped, if you will, or twitched, I thought it was an aha moment. You know, I was giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
I thought,
that's the way I was taking Mary's comment, and she was saying no.
Yeah, and 2 or 3 times
That's not how I
during,
interpret
as
it.
I was going through, he did the same thing. So I thought, oh, you know, he's inspired.
Right.
And then, as soon as I finished, I mean, I don't even think I had said, thank you for your time. He said, read those first 2 lines again.
Okay, let's go back. Read
So
those
I thought,
first 2 lines
okay,
again.
what 2 lines did you want? And I said to him, do you mean this to the commissioners who voted against the wheel tax? He goes, yes. I said, okay. To the commissioners who voted against the wheel tax increase, thank you for living up to your oath of office. To the rest of you who voted for the increase, you have failed the taxpayers.
Did he vote for the increase?
Yes. So then I knew.
That, and say once again, that's the fact that I'm saying that we at Greeneville today are responsible to getting to you, and the importance of what we've been talking about since day 2, when we realized that we were going to be, we have reached out to a community. They were complaining about issues, but some of them were mixing city and county issues. So we went back and we explained the city government, the county government. We have covered meetings on both, and now where Mary and I are having it. Well, Greeneville is different than any town I've ever worked news in. Any town I've ever lived. I mean, the way the government works, the way people don't get involved. And
Right.
we realized day 2 of the show that we had to alter our original mission to include the people who were interested in coming on board, learning with us, and becoming a part of the solution and not part of the problem. You know, they were saying, well, government doesn't work, it only works for the money. I said, well, how can you say that? Because you weren't there. And we went through exercises where we showed how county commissioners or mayors and boards of aldermen are put in a situation, because we're a democracy, to have to vote with these people here because the opposing side sent 3 people.
Right.
And we need, you know, that it doesn't, you know, when you don't participate, you're right, it doesn't work.
Right.
And we're trying to get a grassroots effort with the public. There's a responsibility that goes along with being a citizen.
Absolutely.
And there was a beautiful article I shared with them this morning that was in yesterday's Greeneville Sun, and talking about how it's difficult to be a
While he's pulling that article up, I'm just going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
How long have you lived in Greeneville, Greene County? Do you live in the city or do you live in the county?
I live in the city right now.
Okay. Because I noticed when you stood up and started talking, you made sure, what we do is we do a lot of delineation between the people who live in the county
Ah,
and the
okay.
people who live in the city. So I
because we have
noticed,
2 separate issues, yet we have some issues that
That blend.
blend in,
Absolutely.
right, right.
and you made a point to point out that you represented both the county and the city. So I was curious where you lived, and you live in the city.
I live in the city.
Right. And how long have you lived in Greeneville?
We moved here in 2003.
Okay, so you've been here long enough to get a good
Right.
feel on what's going on.
And my husband was born and raised here.
Uh-huh.
So
Right, okay. Right,
And where are you
right.
from again?
I'm originally from Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Cape Cod.
Because
I
we
knew
have
you
a
from
little hint of the accent,
Little,
but
but
only every once in a
every
while.
once
Like
in a while.
you've sort of.
But
you've sort of-
definitely not from Boston.
No, I don't park my car anymore.
You don't pocket car anymore? Yeah.
So, what made you develop? Was there any specific incident that made you develop an interest in this? How long have you been researching this? How long did it take you to write this letter?
I worked on this letter several days.
I feel like you
Several
did.
days.
I feel like you
I
spent
made
a lot
a
of time
comment
and
to her. I
effort.
said,
Yes.
I bet she did this letter the way my mentor used to write letters. He would go in and write a line or two, and on his computer, and get up and walk away. He would do other things.
Absolutely.
And I noticed by the way he did that, he was able to go back, pull his emotion out of it.
Right.
And that was one of the things I always admired, that I never could get that knack. My personality, I'm more of a comedian with what I say, and that's one aspect of me, but yet there is the serious side that realizes the serious nature of this.
Okay.
And my issue is filtering from the brain to the mouth.
Right.
And so, what was there a particular issue that prompted you to write the letter, or was it just a culmination of issues that you felt needed to be brought to the forefront?
Well, let me just say about me, I don't know if Woody knows this, but I was born in New England, and New England's all about town government. Town hall.
Townships is what they call it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's town meeting. And when we say town meeting here, it means, everybody gathers around and listens to a little briefing. Town meeting up there is exactly that. They call town meeting, and it could go on for weeks. Every night, people come, they bring up the business, just like they do in front of the commission, and people get up and people speak on it. And when everybody's finally finished speaking, or somebody finally has had enough and they call the question, people vote on it. The people in town vote on it. So I was raised to be very involved in what goes on in town government, because we are the town. The town isn't some entity that is out there, just like people say, well, let the government pay for it. Well, I mean, that's not an entity.
That's
So
us.
They
We're
realize
paying
that's
for
us. So, of course, when I came here, I pay taxes. I pay both city and county, and I naturally just became involved in what was going on in town. And one of the first things that came to my attention, and this was way back, brewing towards 2009, was the big refinancing of bonds in the city, and I don't want to go down that.
We've
Right.
discussed that in
Right.
depth on the show. So
And that's a big
familiar with
issue, because next year, the end of next year, it's going to start coming like a boomerang.
Exactly. Well, actually, starting in July, I believe that the fiscal
Right.
budget is going to be affected by
It's
that.
about about $750,000 short just to begin with for that item alone.
And that's the city government.
That is
Okay,
the
right,
city.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is something that I fault the people who are now on the board of mayor and alderman.
I do the same thing,
Yeah.
Mayor and Board of Aldermen.
Yeah,
I do
mayor
the
and board
same
of
thing.
aldermen.
Right.
Yeah, they are responsible. They made a decision to me, which was an irresponsible decision in 2009 to refinance those bonds. The refinancing alone cost us over $3 million.
Yes.
We've discussed that, and we've discussed how that one of the issues that people didn't understand was the purpose for Todd Smith, the city administrator.
Bad decision. And that's a decision, let me comment, that they backdoored us. Now, there was two ways to change the charter. Actually, three ways. They can, as the board can agree to put it to the people, or it can, the people, they can not do anything on it and let the people bring it, but they can also what I call backdoor it. And I think that that's something that should never be done except in extreme emergency. And when I say that, they give it to the state senator and the state legislature, and if they have a state senator that will support it, they can take it in front of the legislature and amend it as a part of a private act.
Right.
Well, of course, one of our aldermen's son is the state representative,
Right.
so of course he's going to say yes. And I think, because I called them, I called Steve Sutherland and I called David Hawk, and I said, you should not take that. That is something, if you're going to change the charter and you're going to bring on salaried people and additional people that are going to cost the taxpayers, we need to be voting on that. That needs to go to a vote of the people.
Well, see, we had someone that was hardline straight down. That fact alone was his opinion. That the people should be voting on it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm gonna go.
Yep.
I'm
Anyway.
gonna get. I would love to have you come in and talk about the city government. Well, I'm sure we could spend a whole show on the city government, but I would love to make
Okay.
it through this letter.
Sure.
Because, see, for me, and that's why I started asking you a little bit about yourself, is because I aspire to write a letter like this one day. You know,
Good.
I was just so impressed with how articulate it was and how you presented the problems, but you also presented the solution. So I'm curious as to how you did your research, and then we'll get into the letter. But you know, it's always important when
Because
you
we want the
start
people
talking
to know,
about facts.
everybody needs to
without
know
being
this
able to back
information
those
is
up.
legally
Absolutely.
available, it's there.
Right. Sometimes it's hard to get.
Yes.
Yes, I
Right?
have determined that as
Yes,
well. So
it
I'm
is hard
curious
to
how
get.
you were
I
able
won't
to
say
accomplish
that
this.
I've only been refused a few things.
Okay.
But what I do is, I've learned to go to, in the city, I go to one of the aldermen to get it, Keith Paxton. He's very good about getting you information. And when I go to the commission, I go to a couple of them. Of course, a lot of them have been replaced, but Ted Hensley's very good about it, Ed Jennings is very good about it. I haven't really had anybody, even though I may be opposed to their political views, that refuse. But the secretary of the mayor's office is wonderful. You know,
Yes, she
she's
is. We
very
had
good
her on the
about
show.
it.
Amy
Yeah.
Rose, you're referring to. She's
No, she's in the city.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Secretary of the county mayor's office.
Yes, county
Okay.
mayor's office is
Right.
very, very good.
And what is her name?
And you shouldn't ask me that.
It'll come back to you.
It will.
Go on.
It'll come back. But she's very good, and I email her. So I got a hold of the budget, and I happened to bring it. But I got the county budget to see what were we talking about for next year. You know, who had what, put everything in, and how much money, and that also, next year's budget gives you this year's budget. Also, frequently gives you 2013. But I try to keep a budget each year so that I can see what the trends are.
Right.
And I spent, several hours just going through that line item, looking at what the proposed, also looking at what the department proposed versus what the budget committee recommended. Because there were a few places where the department asked for this level, and the budget committee actually came back recommending more. And I didn't bring that out.
I don't understand that when we don't have the money to be throwing around.
Exactly.
I'm not real smart, so the common sense test
Right.
is what I rely on getting me through.
And
And
pretty much what the budget committee did was always come in at what they anticipated the budget finishing this year, which indicated to me there really wasn't any serious effort about trimming back.
Right. No. You expect it. I think
Right.
we expect to see the budgets increase every year, and
Right.
that's a result of inflation or whatever. But I think, personally, for me as a taxpayer,
Right.
I anticipate a budget increase, and this was like a light switch going on for me for the first time, because Woody, he sort of sits here and says, I'm like, well, we have to have a wheel tax. How are we going to pay if we don't have it? See, that was sort of my philosophy.
Well, I have
so I'm
a-
going to go in here and I just
But what
want
do you do in your own house?
Well, here's a question.
See, I didn't think about it like
You
that.
don't run out and get another job.
No, I just didn't. I don't know, for some reason, until you read this letter, I didn't really conceptualize, oh, wait a second. We could decide that we don't want a tax increase. We could decide we don't want these budget increases. I just sort of
Right.
felt like it was my obligation as a taxpayer to support these offices, these different departments, no matter what. And so the first one on your
Okay.
list is the gas savings. Do you have any particular numbers on that? Or
I
how
don't.
would you find numbers about something like that?
Well, you have to really
You
borrow.
have to go through the budget.
You have to go through the budget, and unfortunately, the budget that they do release, and this is why that transparency item, the second one,
Right.
I really bid on, they don't give you, for instance, there's not a line for gas.
Okay, so
Okay.
this is the issue that I had. I got in here and couldn't glean any more information out of these budget documents than I could, it wasn't clear. There was no transparency
Right.
to me. So that's the first issue I ran, and I found them kind of difficult to digest as well, because I'm
Yeah.
not really a numbers person. Now, your background is a little different. You have sort of a background in this kind of work, if my understanding
Well,
is correct.
What-
I've been a multitude of things, and I don't know whether that's good or bad, but at one point in my career with the federal service, and see, I worked for the federal government, so probably a lot of the thinking is evident to me, particularly the non-progressive thinking of the federal government it has some similarities that they show in the county and the city. And so, and I'm used to reading items like this. But I was a financial analyst at one point in my, so I worked in the budget department.
That's reflected in the letter. I think that you have experience in that. And if it were not reflected in the letter, I probably would not have responded to it the way that I did. So there's really no way to get clarity about gas prices unless somebody just goes and makes that their mission.
Now we have a question from a viewer.
Okay.
If it is found that after all your points are taken into account, and it is found that all savings have been found, will you agree we need to raise our tax rate? Would you agree that Greene County taxes are a very low compared to other counties of like size in Tennessee, as the graphs, he sent a graph that shows that this is a fact. How do you explain your opinion of high taxes when it appears the county government has kept taxes over the years lower than average for the state?
Well, I think personally, let me take the second part of that question. I don't look strongly, if you will, at other rates
Right.
as a blank. I mean, as a blanket statement. And here's why. I would have to really drill back. If, let's say you're comparing it to any town A and any town B and Green.
Well, economic structure, education, so many other factors.
What's the education? What's the job market? What's the unemployment rate? What is the average salary that the folks make? Is there a higher level of people who can't work and perhaps are on some sort of government assistance? So I don't think you can look at tax rate. I mean, I don't think that that's something that's a rule, yes or no. Just because our tax rate may be lower than any town A and B, that's no reason to say, well, then ours isn't that low, so let's raise it. I think, again, you're getting off the subject. It's just like, do I want a wheel tax or do I want a property tax? That's not the question. The question is, I don't want any tax. Period.
And I shouldn't have to have one because you've been saying you have a fiscally responsible budget.
Yeah.
We have another viewer who says, Wendy is my hero.
Oh.
It might be a New England thing, LOL. He's from up in your neck of the woods, by the way.
I'm just going to ask Woody, just personal preference here. We've got just a few minutes to get her to expound upon this. So if we can just go ahead and ask your questions and hold off just a few minutes until we expound, and then we'll come back to the questions.
Go ahead and post them on the link.
If we have to go just a little bit longer today, I'd be certainly willing to do that.
And one point
but I
that
have
people
questions
need,
about a lot of this
and
stuff.
This might be appropriate to question the people online, is don't forget that in 2012, they did raise the property taxes. Okay, not only did they raise the property taxes with what they needed, they took an additional so many cents, and I don't have that number in front of me, and instead that extra money was supposed to go into the general fund so that we wouldn't have this problem in 2 years.
Right.
And what did they do with the extra money?
And we don't know.
And then why didn't they pay the bills that were behind them?
Instead of putting the money in the general fund, they gave a 2.5% increase straight across the board to the county employees.
So everybody in the county got an increase that we were told was going to go
into the general fund for a rainy day.
Okay,
so that's another thing that bothers me about, here we are 2 years, 2 cycles later, looking forward to next year, which will be the 3rd year, wanting another one.
Right. Okay, so I want to focus on, we talked about the gas prices, which that's pretty logical. We should be able to get an answer to that question.
Right. And you can look at the market of the declining gas. You know, you can follow that. Just generally, what has the gas been here?
Right. Okay. So the web-based data processing service, I'm assuming that it is being used by the Registry of Deeds.
Right. If you can go online and you can get titles, you can get copies of deeds,
I got my title that way. Okay. Well, I got not my title, but I got, that probably
your car.
My car, yes.
No, this is the Registry of Deeds. If I want to know what property Woody owns, I can go right in
to the Property of Deeds
on the web.
office.
I can go into there and I can look, see how many pieces of property he owns. I can actually get warranty deeds.
Right.
Print them up. And that was all put on the web base,
To save money.
supposedly to take a load off the walk-in traffic.
Right.
And I'm assuming it did.
These two, the first issues are really a matter of accountability. So
Right.
nobody's holding anybody accountable for these.
Right.
The one, this is something that I didn't understand that I thought maybe you could give us a brief description about. What exactly is the maintenance of effort? What is that?
Okay, maintenance of effort.
Greene County School, because I think when you talk about schools and decreasing funding for schools, that's the big red flag issue. People do not want to see, because we hear all the time that we're not properly funded.
Right.
So let's talk just a little bit about the, so what you're saying is that the amount of students that we have in county schools has decreased, and so why hasn't the budget why doesn't the budget reflect that decrease? And then tell us what the maintenance of effort requirement is exactly.
The maintenance of effort is, and I'm going to give the people the benefit of the doubt that are the commissioners, etc., that they don't understand it.
Because I don't understand
Right.
it. So.
And what it is there's the Budget Act of 1957 is what we go by. There's a statement in there that says, and it's logical, no local funding, if you're getting state funding and federal funding, you can't take your local funding away to save your money and use theirs.
Okay.
Use that source.
Right.
But there's different levels involved. There's also a BEP, which is the educational funds.
I've heard of
And
that.
there are exceptions, and again, it's logical if you think about it. Don't get caught in these words. The maintenance of effort says you can't, once you have a level of funding for schools, you can't decrease it. And that makes sense.
Right.
Okay. Except if you have a decline in enrollment, because really what the maintenance of effort, local funding is similar to a per capita student. Maybe we pay ours is, and that's one number I am having difficulty getting my finger on,
Okay.
is exactly what has been our per capita rate. But let's say it's $3,000 a student. Okay. If you have 60 students, and there's been, again, I couldn't get a specific number, it was between 60 and 70, it dropped this year. Okay. So, let's say low number, 60 students, okay, at $3,000, $180,000, we can reduce our local funding to the school, and still we're maintaining the same effort, because we're maintaining local funding in $3,000 per student.
I
We're
understand.
not decreasing. Okay?
I understand.
So the maintenance effort only says you have to maintain the level of funding, not the funding itself.
And that's tricky there, but
It
that's
is.
an excellent explanation. So.
Now, and that's for that department. The state department, the highway, it is even less restrictive than that. All it says is if you reduce the local funding, then the state can decide not to give you as much kickback from the gas tax as they normally do.
If you cut local funding.
Right, if you
Which,
cut local
hey, if you're
funding.
gonna cut it, we're gonna cut it.
Right, and that makes sense. But does it mean that we still can't cut? Does it mean that we can't look at our operation and find some ways to be more efficient?
Well,
Sure. No.
there was Mary and I attended a citizens meeting of a long-range planning commission
Right.
meeting, okay? One of the commissioners, Ted Hensley,
Right, he's asked me to come to that meeting.
I would like for you to come to that meeting. Okay? I really would like for you to come to that meeting.
Okay.
Because here's where I've come on this whole thing. Ted at that meeting got up and said, yes, mistakes have been made. Now, we have to figure out what we're going to do. And I agree with that. And what I brought to the table was an example of when I needed to go borrow $500 from my dad. And my dad knew my financial situation. And he knew how much money I was making. I mean, he knew my lifestyle. And he said, well, son, I need to see how you got yourself into this mess and how you're gonna pay me back. And that same philosophy, if you want more tax dollars of mine, then you need to go back and you need to, yes, we've got to move forward and do something. Yes, we're in a time crunch, but I'm not blindly going in and giving you a blank check again.
Right.
Can't afford to do that. It's irresponsible of me as a citizen. It's irresponsible of you as a leader to ask me to do that when you have these things you need to be considering before you put any more tax burden on me. And that would be my answer to you, Richard, for the question that you had answered earlier or asked earlier. I mean, that's where, you know, let's stop. The buck stops here. You know.
Okay. Now the next one about the teachers in Atlanta, that was very clear to me. I understood that. I thought that was completely logical, and I think self-explanatory.
Yeah,
So
it's like we can sit here right now and do this without driving to Atlanta, staying in a hotel, eating 3 meals out, and there's 3 of us, and that's just in this classroom.
Exactly. And to the credit, a teacher actually brought that to my attention, because that's something that's buried in the budget. Okay. And a teacher said to me, I refuse to go, because I think, you know, we're in bad shape here. And if I go on this...
I'd rather have that money
here,
to put school supplies in my classroom my kids need.
Well, another thing she said, you know, we've got 2 and 3 iPads. I've got one that's even sitting in the box still. You know, what's that all about?
Okay, now, when I recently went to the meeting...
That's misuse of government...
Right. I mean,
we called it misappropriation of government property and funds when I was in the military.
They're buying excess property.
Yes.
Right.
I just attended a meeting or read something in the Greeneville Sun the other day that said that one of the biggest needs in the county and city schools right now was technology.
Right.
So the people that are requesting the budgets are claiming that they don't have enough technology in the classroom. I think that's important to note. When there are actually teachers working in the classroom, they're saying, yeah, we've got the technology that we need. Of course, not every classroom necessarily does, but anyway.
But then there are extras. So obviously nobody's canvassing and saying, are you using all the iPads that you've been issued?
Right.
And so again, it
follow-up,
goes back
no
to
accountability.
efficiency and waste.
Another red flag, hot button issue that people have, along with cutting funding for the school system, is cutting funding for health care. Those are the 2 issues that we hear a lot. So when you propose negotiating higher deductible and co-pays for the county employees, and that would produce a savings of $660,000, $666,000, how much of an increase are we talking? Are we talking something that would make the lives of the employees or the county employees substantially more difficult on an economic level?
I'm putting it close to mine. And my copay went from $15 on a doctor's visit to $20.
Okay. So you're using your own personal experience as a reference point there.
Right.
Excellent.
And
My increased fee is only, there's only certain services that have changed.
Right. And my plan fee went up $6. But I talked to the people in our plan, which is, of course, is a federal retiree, which is very similar to the group rates that they get.
Right.
And what it is they could have just jacked ours up, way up, left the copays. They could have done nothing, tried to charge the federal government for their share, which is this $668,000. They chose not to, because the government, the federal government, I mean, look at where we are with that as far as debt.
Right. I understand. Yes.
So there, you know, that would be, to me, bearable. You know, if somebody had to pay another $5, maybe their deductible would go from $100 a year to $200 or $300 to $400. I don't know, but not everybody even uses their deductible for the year. You know, they don't go for anything.
Okay, so that's the health benefits. Now, I've found the overtime in the county attorney's office. Could you go into that just a little bit more and explain to me what FLSA exempt means exactly?
It's Fair Labor Standards exempt.
Okay.
Now, if you work a job after 8 hours in a day, 40 hours in a week, in average jobs, managerial, non-professional, your regular service jobs, they have to pay you overtime. That is governed by the Fair Labor Standards Act. There are certain jobs that are either confidential, professional, managerial, or administrative to those managerial and confidential that are what they call FLSA exempt. And attorneys is generally one of them, doctors, etc., because they are subject to professions where they get a salary. Now, there's another whole thing for comp time and all that, and I'm not going to get off on that either. But because he works a salary, he shouldn't be getting overtime.
Okay,
Exactly.
so you're saying that the county attorney himself is the one that's getting
Well,
the
I don't know
overtime
who's
pay.
getting it, but
But there, in the budget, there's
person
a,
in his office that is secretary to him as an attorney, because he has his own practice too.
okay,
But the person who does secretarial work, confidential secretarial work, because she's covered, you can't go up and ask her questions about the clients because that's privileged information. So she's a confidential person. She shouldn't be getting it either.
okay,
Exactly.
understood.
Under
Okay,
the
getting
Fair
a little
Labor
bit of clarity
Standards Act.
there.
Right, right.
And they're asking for an increase, which you say is
But plus,
not
they're
necessary.
paying. There's a charge of, I forget how much money, but there's a line charge for extra legal services. Now, why are we hiring extra legal services if we've
When
already
we
got
have-
him hired to do the county business?
Well, because he's
pretty
working
busy down
overtime.
there.
Yes.
Because he's working overtime.
That's
We need
right.
another one.
And I'm
But,
gonna,
but
if you guys
I agree with you on that. That's, if you were salaried,
Mhm.
you know, bottom line, when you took that salary, which was more than what you were gonna make as a time clock pusher, you accepted the responsibility, once again, the
Right.
responsibility of 60 to 70 hours.
Right. And he
When you
doesn't
go
get
salaried,
rich.
that's exactly what happens
Right.
to your work life.
And if it isn't, then maybe we ought to look at paying him a service fee per hour used for consultation.
Exactly.
Instead of laying out $60,000 a year,
right.
plus his benefits or whatever. And,
Okay, and if you have questions
Yeah, that
out
should
there,
be
we
contract
are,
labor.
we usually will take your questions immediately, but I want to get, that we have a lot of points to get through. I want to get all the way through everything that Wendy has to say so we can clarify what's going on, and then we will be going back and taking questions. Now, revenue generating transactions in service departments. You might as well have been speaking Greek to me. I have no idea what a revenue generating, I don't know
Okay.
what that
That's a
is.
money making.
That's right. You walk in, you're going to renew your license.
Right?
Okay? Is there revenue transaction? Is there a revenue transaction?
I'm paying to renew
That's
my
right.
license, and so that means the county government is getting
A certain
Slice of that
amount of
pie.
money, right,
Okay.
for that. Okay. You walk in, you just have a question on, I'm thinking about opening a business. Okay. Now, what do I need to do to open a business in Greene County? Person spends 10, 15 minutes, gives you some literature. Has any revenue transacted?
no.
Okay. There's a non-revenue transaction.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say we're chalking those. We're actually chalking, we've had 30 today, 30 every day. We're getting people coming in looking for a new license.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That's a non-revenue transaction. It's taking time. Now, maybe we should put a kiosk or something in the lobby about answering questions for how to open a license in Greene County. What do I do if I've lost my license? They can go to the kiosk and answer that question.
Is this information that you can get online?
No, well, you might be able to get some of them. You can go to the state Tennessee.gov and get certain, but then it really doesn't bring it down to the county.
Okay. All right.
So you could either put it just web-based, you could do it kiosk, you could have kiosk for people who don't have computers at home. You know, a lot of the non-revenue transactions that they handle, could we really cut down, could we eliminate another whole position, or what we call man hours?
Right.
So,
So you're concerned about, that is another issue that's concerned about saving money, cutting costs,
Right.
streamlining the program.
and they did that already, when they went to that you could renew your license online and your registration and all that. That was a move of efficiency, but we didn't reduce any people in the office. In fact, she's come back and asked for 2 more.
Okay. All right, I
So-
understand. So, in the incentive program to increase productivity and eliminate waste sort of goes hand in hand with the, I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Because who knows better where they're wasting time?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. When I go out to get my driver's license renewed, I watch unwasted, I watch wasted man hours. People,
Absolutely.
I'm waiting on the clock, I'm on a break. We've got a room full of people. There is no management whatsoever in that. It is management for, I don't care if they have someone that is the manager, there is no management there.
Right.
Nobody wants to work. They have attitude. They mumble to you and expect you to understand when they're too lazy to do their job. I have a serious problem with that.
Right. Right.
On the time clock,
You're
that's
right.
stealing my money. That, I mean, plain and simple, that's stealing my money.
Sure.
And speaking of that,
And it's unprofessional, and you're right,
Very
there's no
much so.
visibility of management when you're there.
And the customer service is some of the lousiest I've ever seen. I've been to efficient places where they do the system. To places they had a complicated, you got to run 3 places. You got insurance, and they made it so efficient, they put all 3 of the buildings side by side. So you could go from one to the next to the
Nice.
next. But see, that makes sense, and that's why I won't work here.
so if
That's right.
Are you talked about, speaking of this issue, you spoke about that in your letter. You said, how's the performance of each employee objectively evaluated, and what is the
And I know
standard
the
of
answer.
efficiency? That's what I was just getting ready to
There
get
is
to.
none.
That is concise.
I was going to ask
there.
you, are you certain that there are no measures that are
I have
currently in
asked.
place?
I have asked in several departments and several county employees, and there
So
are
there
none.
are none
other
in
than
place.
attaboys. You know, occasionally they'll come out and say, "Good job." So I say, what are they getting their raises on? And worse, what are they getting their bonuses on?
Oh, they get them based on across the board raise.
Right.
That, you know, nobody gets a performance raise. Everybody, the whole
And-
county government.
And then
no
the next
wonder,
issue-
they're grouchy, grumpy. You know, I personally, if I were in a job where I didn't have enough to do, I'd be bored, and I probably would be grumpy.
Right.
Well,
I mean,
what
you
about
could-
the places that you do have enough to do and you're bored because you're too lazy to do your job?
Then you need to be fired.
Well, but see, we can't do that. These are our friends and neighbors that
I
work in
know.
these departments.
I know.
We
Look what
can't
happened.
hold them accountable.
Look what happened when they said they wanted to let somebody go, and it's but you know they have a family and they have a.
So do
This
all
is-
all the other
And
people
that's
out
what I
there out
said.
of work.
This isn't a charity. This is a business decision.
Right.
The
It's not
problem
personal.
is there's too many people involved that are on the commission or on the board, etc., that have. I mean, Mr. Say, his wife's in the school system. He's on the board of partnership, I believe, so he didn't like that cut. You know, they have too many relationships, if you will.
Well, the partnership has too many problems.
It's hard for them to be objective.
Right.
And they've done this for so many years.
Well, when you don't want to be objective
That's
in the
And
first
we have
place.
one more issue, and this is related to what you're saying. What is the schedule of raises, bonus, and other salaries paid? Is there any place that you can go to acquire this information? Or is this, I mean,
Well-
is it line itemed when somebody receives a bonus,
Not bonus,
or wage
but there-
increase?
There are several lines in every department called other salaries and wages.
Okay.
And I can't seem to get a straight answer.
Kind of a nebulous
Yes.
term.
So now I have to go to
overarching
the
nebulous.
department heads and find out exactly what does that other salary and wages.
Are you finding that the department heads know what they are?
Some
Are you
do.
finding any, hey, yeah, here it is, but this ain't right. We got to do something about this. Do you ever
No.
see that attitude?
No. And if anything, I find them more defensive.
Yeah.
Now, you pointed out some exceptions to these service departments, and the exceptions were the sheriff's department, the courts, and the schools. And in that situation, why are they accepted in your mind?
The sheriff's department is also covered by the maintenance of effort. And
Okay.
in my opinion, they're one of the strictest maintenance of effort. It clearly says that you cannot reduce their salaries at all, or their personnel costs at all, unless the sheriff agrees.
Okay.
And that comes, if you read the legislative history of that section of maintenance of effort, it has to do with, they're considered essential personnel
Right.
for public safety.
Okay.
Okay. The courts, because I do some volunteer work with one of the sections in the court, it's the drug recovery court.
Right.
I do some volunteer. I know that the courts run on a shoestring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they really do. And it also aggravates me while we're on the court that the commissioners frequently, you'll hear them, well, let's raise the litigation tax, or let's raise the arrest cost. You know, those people deserve to be punished because they've committed a crime, so we'll make them pay more. And I mean, some of these folks are in such a hole, they'll never get out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not fair either. But I do know that the courts run on a very tight shoestring. And the courts, again, to me, they're essential personnel. I don't ever see
Okay.
too many
Right.
hanging around in the court.
No,
So
they're
these suggestions are coming.
multitasking in different
Yes.
jobs a lot of times.
These suggestions about the courts, the schools, and the sheriff are based on your own observation of those departments and
Yeah, and my own
your
involvement
own
with
research and it. Okay.
Yes, and the
So,
schools likewise, unless you can, if you have to exclude capital, and see, that's another area that they don't have to have all new field houses like they did 3 years ago. Okay, so
I'm aware of that.
they can push back on capital, they can push back on debt service. Not a good thing to do usually, but they can. And other than the declining enrollment, which I had already addressed, then so they wouldn't be really what I call a workload analysis.
okay.
You know, that wouldn't be something. I would look in the schools, probably in the overhead. Like we're hiring this year, they want to hire another psychologist. Are our kids that troubled? That we have to have all these staff psychologists?
I think
Well, they're playing cover their butt because of the way society has just
Yeah.
gone to hell in a handbasket,
But
so to
there's-
speak.
I mean, in our area, there's a tremendous amount of mental health professionals. Why can't we go on a
Well,
fee for service?
we really don't. We have really an issue with mental health treatment here.
Yeah.
Nationwide.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we don't, and we overload one and don't treat another.
Yeah, well, you have this particular illness, we're gonna throw you in this group, we're not gonna treat you individually.
Exactly.
It's more mental health control than mental health treatment.
Right.
now
Being a consumer of those goods and
Absolutely.
services.
Absolutely.
you make some suggestions related to workload analysis and some, really getting into and just highlighting the efficiency of the departments and realizing what the efficiency is. I want to quickly move on to your suggestions because I anticipated you would get up and read the letter and identify a bunch of problems and then go down and sit in your seat. However, that is not what you did.
That's
One of the
right.
reasons why
This
you're
is
my
the good
hero.
part right here.
The first thing is the Greene County Partnership, $167,000 that the county commission gives to them
Green County
yearly,
Bank. Yes.
and they have in legal documents said that they're not. Why? What is the justification of them receiving that money if they're not a political entity, in your opinion?
Well, there is a statute that allows the county to give to charitable organizations, including Chamber of Commerce's that have a 501c6 status. Based on this, if they have a 501c6 status, they could potentially, but I backed up and said, now wait a minute. Every Chamber of Commerce I've ever known functions on its own. And I know that anybody that belongs to the partnership pays some dues, and the dues are not inexpensive. Okay? To me, the Greeneville, Greene County Partnership should be a self-funded organization.
Absolutely.
Period.
Well, I have an
They
issue.
sell their tourism books, or they sponsor something, they get their ads. Why are we giving, hard-pressed in an economy like this, in a town like this, why are we giving that kind of money and almost, a huge sum from the city as well?
Well, and the other thing is they haven't honored their agreement with several businesses of what they were going to get. They have not.
Okay.
They have not honored their obligation commitment that they have. It is. They have probably the worst name of any organization in town.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, see,
Now
from
I'm
the
basing that on the business owners that ask me, are you a member
Okay.
of the partnership? Well, let me tell you what I'm still trying to get and why I recommend you don't do it. It's the good old boys club where they get the money and they go do whatever it is they want to do.
Right. And you
Okay.
see, they were involved in the nitrogen plant, which
Yes,
of course is a big hot issue.
We talked about
Now,
that
here,
as well.
that's when they said, oh, no, you know, we have nothing to do with that. And, well, they do have something to do with it, and that's still not a closed chapter yet of their
Right.
involvement in it.
Whether or not they'll
And
release
whether or not.
documentation related
Right.
to that to the
And
public.
so if they've got their hands in these tax incentive loans, that, you know, sort of wooing businesses, and I
Yes.
see they just gave something to
that was in
America,
the news,
right.
yes.
and so either they are or they aren't.
One or the other.
Yeah.
Transparency
And-
once again.
And I don't particularly care for that statute of being able to have our tax dollars going at, not our whims, but really, I think it's too loose. Going
What
to charity.
has the partnership done with that $167,000 for
The
the
benefits,
businesses
and the benefits the county.
and benefits
Taxpayers.
the county?
It benefits the taxpayers more than the.
Well, if you benefit the businesses, that means the taxpayers are spending money.
Right.
And then the city is getting their taxes off of that. The system is rolling. But they have problems getting their act together with what they promised from one year to the next.
Well, and they keep saying that they'll get jobs. Well, where's the jobs?
On U.S. nitrogen.
But
Didn't you know that?
yeah, they're not hiring people from here. They're hiring.
Sure they are. Didn't you know that?
Yeah, right. Just like the Food City, it's tax-free, right?
Exactly.
The new Food City, all it did was
Exactly.
take from another Food City.
Exactly.
You proposed the cutting the funding to the recreational departments.
Right.
That's
That's-
$55,000. Do you believe that if that funding were cut, that the local businesses and nonprofits would step up and pay for that program?
Absolutely.
Well, see, this is one of the.
I sort of do
All right,
too.
now,
I believe
now
that's
this
something
is
that would
one
be
of
maintained.
the issues. I see an importance for some money to be put into this department. And I say that because, especially in the spring, summer, and fall, I don't care what part of Greeneville, I don't care what part of Greene County I'm in, there are kids on sports fields, the stands are packed. It's like, my goodness, we have 65,000 people in the county. Where did these people come from?
Right.
Yeah, but I
You
think
know,
that
so I see some positives because that's keeping some kids off the streets. But
and that's why I asked the
And
question.
that's one of
why I
those.
asked the question.
But that's one of those that would need to go in debate.
Right.
Rather than focusing on what would happen if it were cut by the what this is essentially $55,000 that taxpayers are paying.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so that's why my question to you was: do you really and genuinely feel like businesses and nonprofits would step
I
up?
do.
And I agree with you. I think that they probably
I do.
would.
They do with
Especially-
uniforms.
Yeah.
They've done it with uniforms. They've done, and I don't think that the taxpayers need to be buying, you know, the shirts and equipment and et cetera. I mean, when I grew up, we had to pay if we couldn't pay
We bought our own.
church, whatever.
I had to buy
Right.
my own Boy Scout
The
uniform.
next two issues I think are the most hot button issues.
Yes.
Emergency medical services and 911, because when you start asking to cut those budgets, people get very nervous
Right.
because we all want to make sure that the ambulance arrives on time.
Absolutely.
So you suggested 714,000 overtime
Scheduled overtime.
schedule. Okay,
That
so in
means
other
they
words,
put that
they're-
into the budget.
That
Okay.
means that they pay $900 and some odd $1,000 for salaries, and another $714,000. What that amounts to is that instead of staffing it properly and looking at what the wages are, and I did that. You saw on the Facebook page.
right.
What
I looked
we're
at that.
we're actually paid more. What they need to do is staff it so that people aren't working 24-hour shifts. I personally have great pause to be treated by somebody who's just coming off a 24-hour shift.
I agree with you.
Okay? So I think there's no sense paying those people time and a half. I know why they do it, because they want to give them a higher wage and they want to recruit good people. And they say, well, if we paid them regular salaries like EMS people, they'd go somewhere else. Well, have at it. This is a free market. I'm sure there's another 43 waiting to be hired.
Good
So,
point.
why should we be paying them time and a half? You can save half of that money.
That's a
So-
$714,000 is a substantial
Sure.
sum of money. Now, of course, what's your opinion on the reopening of the South Green branch, where they're the EMS, where they're wanting $200,000 put back in the budget for that?
Well, do we really need 200,000, or is that playing on the time and a half again?
Okay.
Okay.
So you would
What
propose
are the
that we
costs?
actually
What
analyze the cost
exactly-
there.
Yes, let's
Well,
look at all of our costs.
Right.
The new person that came in said, well, you know, maybe I need it, but I need to look at it. I'm hoping that he looks at the staffing. I'm hoping that he looks at, we do need to cover. I think we do need somebody out there because logically, you know, it takes them just as long to get out there as it does to come back in here. So, I mean, it's...
Right.
it's
Question
So
for
we,
you.
we've got just about 6 minutes or 4 minutes
Okay.
left, and we're going to go a little long today. I want to go ahead and get through the last two here,
Okay.
and then we'll go back and take everybody's questions,
All right.
Woody, including yours. 1 hour
And the
work
Green
week.
County is, this was already discussed, they could join in with like Hamlin County or Hawkins County, etc.
And you don't see a decrease in service
I don't at
as a
all.
result of that?
Mhm.
Okay, because
It's a
I know
call-in.
that the 911 department is planning on expanding in the next few
Right,
years.
they
and-
want to spend another $50,000 on this new technology. It was in the paper a few
Yes,
days ago.
yes,
And that will slice off an estimated 27 seconds,
okay.
you know.
Yeah,
So,
I saw that.
again, is that 50,000 right now? You know, is that really a good investment?
Okay.
And
Right, which
that's
that's
in
an
addition
easy
to
argument
this.
to make because people want their 911 service
Right.
to be 27
Well, it's an
seconds
emotional
more
argument.
quick. Exactly.
See.
Now we've got the reducing the equivalent of 1 hour per work week per employee, and that would save $328,000.
Right.
How did you come up with that figure precisely? Was that just you sitting down and looking at these budgets? And
I went through and I actually took the salaries, I added them up, I took the man hours, divided to get an average per department,
okay,
and then an average per city.
okay,
And then took the 1 hour a week and took that down.
okay. And then, of course, the copays and deductibles for the county health insurance program so that there's no increased cost, particularly for the 2015-2016 budget.
Right.
So for you, you don't necessarily see this as a long-term thing, just right now.
Well,
while
right
we're-
now, and let's look at it, because, you know, insurance companies are always willing to negotiate.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we
Well, when you
have
have a monopoly, you have to.
Yeah.
you have a
Absolutely.
savings.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you really do.
You have an overall savings of $1,027,000 is what you've come
Right.
up with.
Without
and I hope
that
that you'll post
$666,000.
that statistic that you posted on your page related to the EMS, or I hope you'll post that on our page later so people can take a more detailed
Okay.
look at that. So we got through that now, and let's
Great.
take some questions. I just wanted to, you know, it's one thing to read a letter, but it's another thing altogether to hear you clarify these points.
Okay.
So I wanted to go through and do that, and people are probably going to have some more questions related to that. So if you're okay and comfortable, if we'll start
Sure.
taking questions now. Okay. Do you need some more coffee?
We're gonna have to
He already
make
got
it.
me some. He got me
Okay,
some.
great.
I'm fine with this, yeah.
All right, Woody, do you want to,
Well, Tom had a comment. He said, from the partnership webpage, they admit involvement with nitrogen. In the past 15 years, we have helped locate 20 manufacturing firms, including U.S. Nitrogen.
And where's the jobs?
But you're not supposed to ask that question.
Oh, okay.
Don't, yeah, this is Greeneville.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is
See,
what
I-
we've been trying to, you know,
Yeah.
this is the thing that hasn't made sense to me and made me decide, you know what? I'm gonna find out what the hell's going on, because 2 and 2 is not adding up to 4. I'm seeing way too much smoke for no fire to be going on.
Right. If you hired 3 people in the studio,
Mhm.
right, and you were in a group of people that were saying, well, you know, businesses aren't doing any hiring, wouldn't your first response be, well, I hired 3?
But that would be,
Human
I just
nature
hired
is
3
that we
people.
would talk about our accomplishments.
mhm.
If businesses were hiring in this town, wouldn't they be saying, well, I've hired 20?
Well,
I've-"
actually,
And we would see that in the newspaper,
well,
but we're not seeing it.
here's what I'm
And
seeing.
we just saw that the
lot
unemployment
of
rate actually
people-
has increased.
Exactly.
A lot of people in this county won't work. I've had business owners to say, I have work,
Right.
but they want to show up till they get their first paycheck so they can go buy their pills, and then they don't want to come back and work. And when they come here, they don't want to work, they just want a paycheck. Now this are business people
Exactly.
that are talking specifically to me, saying these things. I have to take that as fact of what's going on in the business community.
They're right. They're
Tom
right.
Schumart has a comment about the city commissioner. He says a city commissioner making $900,000 per year should be voted on, no doubt in my mind.
I don't know anybody that's
But-
making $900,000. We don't have a city commissioner.
But do you feel we need a commissioner?
We don't have
Or
one.
that this should be a part of the mayor and alderman's duty? I think he's referring to the town planner here. Or
Oh,
the-
I think
okay.
he's referring to the
Todd
city.
Smith.
Yes, Todd Smith, city manager, and
Yes,
he makes
city manager.
90,000, not 900.
He says,
He
right,
just got
90,000.
excited.
He's
Okay.
got it a little bit, but he
Oh,
says
okay.
Greeneville has never thought of one in the past until I believe in 2011. How have they made it through all these years without one? That's a question from one of our viewers this morning. Wendy, how would you respond to that?
I say that I think the government structure that was before with the town recorder was sufficient. I think it operated that way. Now, where the fallout came is when Lorraine King was the mayor.
Mhm.
And this is really interesting, and I think it's appropriate. When she was mayor, she took the park and recreation people in the winter, if you recall, and moved them to help the public work people.
Mm-hmm.
Because she said they don't have anything to do in the wintertime in parks and recreation.
Mhm.
I think it was a wonderful move. W.T. Daniels campaigned hard that she broke the charter. She violated the charter.
He did
Charter was
violate.
law. I mean, that's all you heard from him. It was like a chant. And people, not knowing what the charter really was all about, I think were swayed that she had committed this egregious.
Once
Now,
again, they listened to Uncle Bob's opinion
Yes.
that we've talked about.
and so he beat her, he became mayor. First thing that he starts doing is he has parades and festivities and all kinds of hooplas downtown, and that's fine. Well, in the charter it says no town money, and I wrote about this in the paper. It wasn't that I was against the
Of
festivities,
course not.
but the charter said no town money will be
And this
used
is
for
law, this
festivities
is law,
and
this is
parades.
law.
And I said, then if you're going to do that, you need to change the charter.
Mhm.
Because you're no better than what you accused her of.
Right?
Okay. So
They did.
Right,
That's
yeah,
what
and they
they did.
changed it, and they changed it with the back door because they know people. I mean, there's still people who think about Sunday being Sabbath. They took that language out of there. If they put these things to the people, they won't. If they had put that town manager to the people, I think people would have voted against it. I would have.
Tom
I
would
saw,
have. I'm the person
I
that
would
gave
have
this
seen
question.
I saw no reason to have anything more. We had Jim Warner, but see, Jim Warner tried to clean up some of the inefficiency,
Right?
and they went after him.
Yes.
When they beat out Lorraine, they went after him.
I
I mean, the election was in
Relatively
June,
familiar with
and he
those
was
here.
targeted in August.
Yep.
So Bill Jones has a question for you this
Okay.
morning, Wendy. Unfortunately, there are stipulations on a salary person and overtime. I have had to fight this in hearings twice in Georgia and lost both times. I have a rep from Department of Labor spending 4 days going through our payroll and paperwork, and she was very helpful consulting with me many times during and after to be sure we are doing things legally. A person can be on salary, but if a certain criteria is not met, they must be paid overtime.
Right.
Just because someone is on a set salary doesn't mean they are exempt from paying overtime. The following is a small business web page, and he
Oh, good.
gives this. Classifying an employee as exempt is not always easy and does require thought as to job duties and responsibility. The employee job type and duties must meet 3 general standards to be able to make this classification. And he goes into some more detail here.
Good.
And I don't see a question here, but if you want to take a look at what Bill has to say about the issue related to the
Yeah.
overtime,
And that's good, and he is correct. And that's why I said it has to fit into certain categories. But if he were, that was his only job, I might understand that there are times when he has to be there at 8 in the morning and he has to be there at 8 at night.
right.
But I'm not sure, because that's a fee that we pay him per year to be on call,
Right.
if you will.
That might be an issue that somebody
Right.
might want to take upon themselves to really explore and
Right.
research.
And it was a
take look at.
question, why are we paying him overtime? Are we paying him because we're working him over a 14-hour span, you know, and do we really have to? So.
Or is it
Right.
retainer fees?
Right, or are we
Amen.
paying his secretary that because she's not confidential, she's shared with another department?
Right.
I mean, these were questions that I said they needed to ask, and they needed to find out to see what they were allowing.
Absolutely. Ray Overturf has a comment for you this morning. He says, very interesting show today with Wendy. She has many valid and well-made points. Good food for thought. I want to go back to the question that we asked earlier. And you spent some time on the second part of the question, but I wanted to focus on the first part of the question.
Yeah, I think we got
The
off
first part of the
track
question this question is from Richard Gash. He says, if it is found that after all your points were taken into account, and it's found that all savings have been found, will you agree that we need to raise our tax rate?
We did that one already.
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, I guess I would. But
So in other words, if all these budgetary cuts
if
were
they
not
went
practical,
through, yeah, if they were not practical for a reason other than, oh, that would hurt Jane Doe, or, you know, I don't think so, or in your case, you know, I think we should pour money into recreation because the kids have to have something to do. Again, you know, if everything, there wasn't a cent, yeah, I mean, obviously. But I wouldn't
Yeah.
have raised the point, I guess, if
But-
I thought that there was. Yeah.
Well, with
So-
the rate, with the increase, see, this is information that I had forgotten about, is the increase in 2012 and the extra
Right.
money that
right.
you were talking about, and that's where, whoa, time out, where's the money?
Do you have that?
thank you very much.
That is,
I need this.
you know,
This is a list of county commissioners.
Right.
And so if that were to be the case, Wendy, would you choose the property tax or would you choose the wheel tax increase?
Oh.
All being said, and all these cuts cannot possibly be made, you present every single
as a
one of
property
them.
owner, why
Which one
should
would
I
you
be paying
choose?
for the folks out in the county?
I think I would.
You know, why should I be paying a higher property tax so everybody else can drive?
20 cents it is, that it went up last time. Which one would I go for?
Because that may actually be what it comes down to. So I want our taxpayers and our voters to be aware.
I'd have to think, I really would have to think hard. Unlike you, I don't like paying, but I don't think there should be a wheel tax. I think the wheel tax is wrong. It should have been solely for roads and the highway department, etc. I don't think it should be something that's just passed around, so I really object to wheel tax. So I guess I would lean more towards property tax.
Okay.
And,
That's just an opinion.
not that I like
It may
but
come down to that, you know.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't
we're
really matter
basically,
how hard
we're in
we
a
fight, it still
situation
may
we
come
have to
down
look
to
at
that.
the lesser of two evils.
Right. Right.
Tim,
But we
Exactly.
need everybody participating in this so we
Yes.
can do this properly.
We've got Tim Massey commenting also for you this morning, Wendy. The partnership has a long history of recruiting businesses. They promise tax incentive and low wages to get them here, and then when the incentives are up, these businesses are gone and leave behind their pollution.
That's exactly
I
right.
think that's not only the case in this county, but historically in our region, in this area of Appalachia, I think if you do a little bit of research, you're going to find that that's what happens here, more so than you would find that it happens in the place where you grew up. And I wonder if that's not actually a reflection of our citizens' failure, the failure on the part of our citizens to get involved in now that I've met you, to get involved in the political process, not to a much greater or lesser level than people in these town hall meetings.
I think you're right, because the tax incentive is a good, grab and go. And I think that could be addressed legislatively. People need to get involved in this town. You are so right. And I talk to people and they say, oh, you're so brave, you get up and speak. And
Same thing they're saying to us.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
you're so
you
brave.
need to get involved, because 1, 5, 10 people are not going to move to tithe. And they have to get involved. But the tax incentive, I think, it could be easily changed. If they don't remain after so many years, unless they can show, bankruptcy, whatever, financial stress, then what they need to do is they need to put it back in.
And that needs to be in the contract up front.
Right.
when
Right.
we're gonna give you these tax breaks, but when that time is up, you still have a responsibility to stay here.
Right.
We're giving you this for this amount of time to come here with the intent of you staying here.
Right.
And this is, you know, and you extend that into a contract and
Well, the taxpayers are absorbing that money too, because they're not getting taxes during that point in time.
Right.
Right.
So they're absorbing, if you will, the services that are being offered to that store.
Absolutely. We've got another question from Richard Gash for you this morning, Wendy. Why would you not raise both wheel tax and property tax at the same time? So when we would be proactive to costs of running our country in the future, do you think the cost of running government in the future will be less or more?
Well, ideally, they should be less, because as we move towards more and more automation and electronics, we should be using people less and less. And while some of those people might become virtual employees at home, then we won't have to pay for buildings.
Right.
We need to always think about what do we have available, what workforce do we need, and keep balancing those. But no, I wouldn't raise both, because 2012 is exactly what they did. They didn't take what they needed. They took what they needed plus a rainy day. and
now
turned
where's the
right
money?
around.
Before you get any more tax money, Richard,
Right.
back to, we going to Dad, and Dad saying, look son, you know, that's where we are. Oh, stop, time out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where we, the citizens, should be standing up, and not having citizens standing up talking about, you know, taxes, because that is the last thing they want to hear. You know, you made the comment that we are paying lower than other towns our size. That's not a good way to look at it, because you have other factors.
Right.
We have towns that are smaller than us that have higher real estate taxes than we do, because they are more educated, they're working those jobs, they have those more expensive homes, they have those more expensive paychecks. And that's, you know, we gotta bring it back, time out, start over, let's figure out where the money's gone. Ted Hensley was right when he said we have to move forward, but we're not moving forward. We, the public, should be standing together. We're not moving forward without some accountability on this. I can't give you any more money. You keep asking me, and you keep not showing me completely where the money is. You keep hiding it in some weird places that you have to be in her career field to understand this thing.
And her level of intelligence.
And her level of
articulation
intelligence.
as well. And I've been extremely inspired by you, and I've said that to our audience, and I want to again reiterate that to you. If the key to solving these future problems is community involvement, what would you recommend to be the best way for citizens to become involved in both county and city government?
Well, I think they should start going to the meetings.
Okay.
And I know for a fact that when large groups of people show up at meetings,
For one side of the issue or the other.
or the other, it gets the elected officials' attention. I think you need to get to know your elected official, whether they agree with you or not. You need to be in constant comment with your elected official.
And how do you go about doing that exactly?
Pick up the
sort
phone.
of give
If you can pick up the phone, if you're like me, you pick up the phone, stop them on the street. Or if you're a little intimidated by a face-to-face, write your thoughts down and send them a letter.
Excellent idea.
Or an email.
Excellent idea.
Or an email. Most of them, only 2 of them have an email listed.
Okay.
And the rest of them, one of them doesn't even have a phone. So you would have to.
Who has the email?
Robin Quillen has an email, and I just gave her the list.
Right.
And Ted Hensley has an email.
Okay.
The others have phones, although some of them, lately their phone box has been full, so you couldn't leave a message, and they weren't answering it.
Yeah.
One particular commissioner doesn't have a phone, so you would have to speak to him in person.
Okay.
And
How do you be a commissioner without a phone in this day and age.
Well, I don't know whether he doesn't have a phone or he just chooses not to give it.
And so we can go to the meetings.
Right.
We can have a face-to-face or secondarily contact them through email or telephone. And
I think if you want to understand some of the subjects, if you have a web, you can go to CTAS, C-T-A-S, which is the County Technical Advisory Services.
Is that .gov.com?
Just put in CTAS and it'll bring up.
Okay.
and I'll post
And
that
I think
to
it's
our
actually
page
I think
later.
it's EDU, but I'm not sure. And then there is MTAS, which is the Municipal Technical Advisory Service. These are they're part of the University of Tennessee campus. There are
Right.
services that actually advise our commissioners and they advise the people in the municipality, in the city. And they have a huge knowledge database. And you can you could put in maintenance of effort and you'll bring up anything that they've written on maintenance of effort.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I can get this from the county courthouse.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you
can
you
go
can
right
use
down and
that.
ask for a copy of it. I ask them to send it to me electronically so that they don't charge me
That's what I would
$20 to
do.
print it. Yeah.
And so you would use this CTAS and MTAS
MTAS.
as a tool to understand over and above understanding specifically what's going on in our county.
Yes.
Learn exactly
yes,
what it is
yes.
that you're
When
upset
they
How
about.
the system works.
All right.
more.
When you don't particularly understand like maintenance of effort, because it was told to me, like it was told to you, that's it, maintenance of effort. You can't cut anything. I thought, well, that doesn't even make sense. What happens if the school shuts? You're still going to pour all this money into it? So I started there. Then I went to the actual statutes, the Tennessee statutes, and read them, which I have to disclose that I am admitted to the Tennessee bar as an attorney. So I'm not practicing. I'm inactive because I'm retired and I'm not going to pay all those fees.
I don't blame you.
But
Knowledge is still there.
So you have an understanding of
Statute.
statutes, which might be something that that might be a skill that maybe not all of us would have.
Right,
So
right.
you can interpret the statutes.
yeah, and you can go to the Attorney General's office. A lot of times the Attorney General will pass an opinion on, for instance, maintenance of effort. So that there are certain subjects that all you have to do is go into the Attorney General and put in your search terms and you'll see whether they legally have made a determination. It's not a final decision, it's just an advisory opinion.
Right.
But it gives you a little indication of
What the laws,
Right.
where it's headed.
and we used to have a couple of groups in town. One was the 9/12 group, and we actually had a tea party, which some people immediately say tea party, but I just went because it was interesting information. I think that's what we're lacking. We're really lacking a citizen group where people get together and talk about these issues. And I'm elated that you're doing this.
Aw.
Absolutely elated.
Well, I was just
Really?
gonna give you this. I think we might have another comment here. Oh, we have a comment from Bill Jones. And actually, several people are having the same response to you that I had. Richard Gash, I'm just going to tell you what he said because sometimes he can be a little devil's advocate. We found on our show and personally,
It's okay.
he feels that as a taxpayer and educated system, I find your guest response is condescending. And though her responses to my questions are interesting and may be accurate, I don't think she's answered my question. Now, he was the one that asked the question about whether or not, if you find that we can't make these savings, if we can raise the taxes, and so that was his comment there. Then he says, would enjoy meeting and sharing opinions with this guest. So
Oh,
he
love
likes to
to.
he likes to do a
He
little
loves,
tete-a-tete.
now
Yeah.
he's a very
And that's how I
engaging
felt.
person.
Yes.
And he's
He's
not,
also
he
from New
doesn't,
England, by the way.
I'll be
no,
happy
he's
to
from
go.
New
New
Jersey.
Jersey.
New Jersey.
Be
But
happy
here's
to
the thing
go.
about him, he is one of these people that he is not being challenging. This is the way this
That's
is
okay.
engaging in conversation
Yeah.
because he reflects on his, he listens. Okay, I've come into this with a different opinion, but he walks out of it. He may still have his opinion, but he understands your opinion.
And I think
You
that's
know.
what you need to do because all of these may not work.
Right.
And this was just something, and I just went through and I thought, well, what can I glean in 3 minutes, to these
Right.
folks? And I knew I wouldn't speak this in 3 minutes. I mean, I could have spoken to them all evening.
I was ready to hear you talk. Okay. but
But-
they were cutting you off.
Right.
They were calling time on you. I think
Right.
twice during the speech
Right.
they called time on you,
Right.
and you continued. I wasn't even honestly sure if you'd made it to the end of your speech or
Yes.
that you had actually been able to cover every point because I felt you were being rushed.
I really tried, I knew I would go over the 3 minutes. I really tried to stay within 9 minutes, which I did.
Yes.
And I timed myself several times. I had cut down even some of the recommendations.
Right.
I cut a lot of them out.
See, I would like to see other recommendations that you have, because one of the things I've been asking from the people, okay, I don't have a problem if you're going to complain about something, but I'm going to require you to send me your solution to fix it.
Sure.
Right.
If you want to complain, that's cool.
You were
But
the
send
first
me a way to
person.
fix it.
Right.
I
And
can't do
that's-
anything about your complaint other than complain with you.
Right. And that's why I ask people, well, what would you do? And, to tell Richard, absolutely. I mean, what other alternative would I have if all else fails and they're pinching every dime they can in this county? Well, then we would have to raise those. Obviously, we'd have to raise one or the other.
But they're not pinching the dimes. They're
I
not
don't
showing
see
us
that
where
they're
the money is that less than 3 years ago that they took with this new tax.
Absolutely.
Bill
I
Jones?
mean, it just,
And so idealistically, I guess, or hypothetically, sure. I mean, you have to do what you have to do.
Right.
But-
Good morning, Bill Jones. He has another comment for
Okay.
you here. He says, great show today, and Wendy has done her homework before putting down on paper, which is what I felt. These type of sessions makes people think even if they don't agree with what's being said. Why heck, even old Red Neckerson sometimes makes you think, even with his off-the-wall remarks he makes in his statement. Not sure if anybody will know Red, but he states his opinion on subjects in 90-minute segments on different radio stations. He has another comment, which might be,
I thought he was getting ready to
his, Bill says, Misery Hill Battle, Richard and Wendy. I would sure listen. We need to have a debate,
Yes,
for sure.
yes.
So we have some very engaging people
Yeah.
that had some misconceptions and didn't know some things, and we all learned some things together. And now I'm trying to show, look, get involved. I'm not asking you to agree with my opinion,
Right.
but I am asking you to think for yourself. I don't want you to take what I say and run with it and think, because I'm going to sit here some days and I'm going to go off the wall and I'm going to say some really stupid things that I'm going to state as
he
opinion
is.
and facts.
Right.
And it's
I'm
going to be
aggravating
total
with it.
raw emotion and stupidity. Don't take it because I said it. Check the facts out yourself. Bill was the first one to send me a private message. I get you now. You're trying to make me think. I like to think, but I've gotten in a habit of not thinking.
Right.
We all have.
I think this is an important question that, speaking of Bill, that he has for you, Wendy. Have you heard any feedback from leaders concerning your letter?
Actually, I have. I've heard from 3
Great question.
of the commissioners, and 2 of them actually, said that 2 sitting commissioners, and 1 used to be commissioner. That evening, Rex Hobson was sitting there, and when I came by, he jumped up and he said, "That's the best presentation I've ever heard in front of this commission."
Rah, rah!
And
That's how I felt.
Ted Hensley thanked me for that. He said, you've touched on places that, should be looked at. And Ed Jennings thanked me for, this is his first year, and he said, I am so glad that somebody came to the commission, spoke, and actually had some things to think about. And not just say, bad job, kind of thing.
So we have another
Well,
question
see,
from
you
Richard.
brought specific issues to the table, and you brought specific ideas of solutions to the table. And the key is, okay, we can't make all of this work, but there's a lot of this we can. We've already established with the first page of your letter cuts can be made. Number one, $167,000 a year to the partnership should cease. I don't want that. I don't pay that for my business. I don't want my tax dollars supporting it.
Right. And somebody may differ. It's like you and I on the recreation. I suggest that. It's not because I'm against kids.
Right,
You know,
right.
I have kids. I have grandkids.
But that's
could
where I would have to
definitely-
see what else on the budget
Right.
that I would think
Vote for
needs
that.
to be cut
Right.
before that needs.
Right. And that's what people need to do. We're not going to agree.
And if we take $1,000 off of each one,
Right.
how
And they-
much money? Each line item, if we just took $1,000 off of it, how much money would we save?
Yes. And the commissioners, I think, owe it to the county as a whole to be looking at that. And instead of being so subjective because of their, oh, the poor kids and we're underfunded.
Right.
Are we really underfunded in the schools? I mean, are we really? Do we really need all that we have?
What the teachers need are the classroom aides to properly do their jobs in this day and age.
Speaking of how you feel about the county commissioners and the job they're doing, I'm going to ask this more broader question. It's actually a Richard question, but he asked about the mayor and alderman. He said, would you be willing to admit that the mayor and alderman want the best for the county? And I'm going to sort of expand that and say, would you be willing to admit that the county and the county commissioners want what's best for the county? Do you think it's a matter of intent, or do you think it's a matter of ignorance?
I don't think it's a matter of ignorance. I think it's a matter of, and I think they're a little different. Do I think that the mayor and aldermen want the best for the county? I know Keith Paxton does.
I think Brian
I
Bragan does too.
I think there is an element of past relationships. They've grown up with some of these folks that they can't shake out of their thinking. I think there's a certain entitlement that they have in their minds, and I think that when they differ and they hear from people, they readily dismiss it as 5% don't like it, and all these quiet ones must like it because they're not saying anything. And I don't think it's ignorance. I think it's just that's the way it's always been in Greeneville.
We have a question. What background does your guest have on education? I'm thinking, well, first of all, you're an attorney.
Well, I started off when I was fresh out of school. I started off as a teacher.
Okay.
So that's my. I worked 3 years as a teacher. Was not real happy with the school system I was working in. Was fortunate enough to get an invitation. I had taken a civil service exam for federal government. I was a single parent at the time, and I looked at a 60% teaching position versus a federal job, and it was a purely economical decision for my family.
We're coming up on 10:30. We got one more comment this morning, Woody. I don't know how you feel about this, but we've worked this.
So my initial training was in education.
Richard
Okay.
wants to open up a can of worms clearly with you. You guys, we're going to have a debate on this show with these two. Because
No. Richard has been here only a couple of years. He really doesn't understand the true dynamics of
Greeneville.
Greeneville.
Well, his
And he really doesn't see where we are really saying it is different. He's not involved in seeing that like you and I have been. And I said, give it another 2 years. It takes about 4 years. What it did for me. How long did it take
I mean,
for you?
I'll tell you, I've been involved and I've lived in many, many places. And I've come here to Greeneville, and this is the first place where I've spoken out politically that I've received hate mail.
Oh yeah,
I apologize
see
on
that was
behalf of
another
our
reason
citizens.
they
Yeah,
say
I'm sorry that
they're
happened.
proud of you for having the courage, because I was told when I started this format, you know, that a newspaper reporter was threatened, and I said, you know, I've actually been threatened and shot at as a news reporter, and I know how to handle that.
Right.
And I mean, I wasn't being arrogant or egotistical, but to me, I take that as a personal threat. And buddy, I'll nail you to the wall. We got Geraldo
He says,
Rivera on the story in our hometown.
Yeah.
Richard says, I don't agree with your guest's opinion on the motives of the alderman. Please elaborate with your opinion with fact. Well, you've already brought up an example of that this morning, the example of Buddy Hawk and the backdoor policy with the changing of the county charter commission. So instead of bringing it before the people, the county, board of mayor and aldermen chose not put the issue to, they chose just go through the good old boy system and go through the back door and get it approved without necessarily presenting it to voters. That's one example.
And Richard misunderstood my statement
and
too.
then we can also give, I think we can give clear-cut examples of that also with just me, not as knowledgeable or educated on the subject as she is, but if you'll recall, the county commissioners reported in the newspaper that they felt confident that they were representing their taxpayers by voting for the wheel tax increase. However, that did not turn out to be the case.
No,
because the people signed the petition to have that overturned. So those are two concrete examples, one from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and one from the County Commission. Would you like to elaborate on that any?
Well, I think, when they raised the bonds, I wrote to the paper. I wrote a very detailed, well-researched letter on why the bonds shouldn't be refinanced. They took it. The person that was advising them from MTAS clearly came out and said that the people of Greeneville, it should go to the legislature because the people of Greeneville were not capable of making that decision.
Who made that statement?
The consultant that they worked with from MTAS.
Okay.
When they were considering changing the charter.
So we're too stupid in Greeneville. Well, here's the sad thing. By our lack of participation, that's exactly what we've made ourselves look like. We really have.
And if I had been a mayor and an alderman, and a paid consultant told me that, I would say,
out of here, buddy.
Thank you for your services. And that would have shown to me, I would have been insulted. And I would have deliberately taken it to the vote for the people.
Right.
Yes.
And this guy says you're too stupid to make this comment.
Tom Schumart says bravo to you and bravo to you. That was probably for me, right, Tom? Bravo to me, right?
Yes, bravo to me.
I suspect that it might be you since I don't get a bravo every single day after every single show.
You should.
Bill Jones says, do you think there is a teacher that would say the schools don't need... Bill Jones suggested that we have a teacher.
I happen to know a teacher that would say that.
So that we don't need more money right now.
That's exactly right.
It's
the same teacher that told me about the $1,000. It's the same teacher that told me about the extra iPads.
So if there is one, there will probably be more than one, because for every one person you see, there's another 100 people that or more that probably feel the same way.
I would say that there are some, because if this one is vocal about it, you're right. There are some that probably think it but don't say it.
Right. So, and I'm sure that there are a myriad of issues that we could go into apart from this letter, and I hope that you will consider coming back and maybe discussing some future issues. We've really enjoyed having you on the show, Woody.
I enjoyed being here.
We are now at 10:34. And do you have any further questions for Wendy? I genuinely can't express how excited I've been about you being here, and how I just think that this has just been so informative. And for me, as a person who's just getting involved with these are my first meetings. This year is the first meetings that I've ever attended, and I'm going to trying to go to all the ones I can. But I have been to several county commission meetings and several city board of mayor and alderman meetings, and so. I'm really glad that I had the experience of hearing your letter in the context of the county commission meeting, because the rest of the meeting it lasted for 3 hours.
Right.
It didn't seem to me like they were, with that many people in the room, it was difficult to get focused on finding a solution to things without everybody feeling frustrated.
Right.
Sometimes it felt like beating a dead horse on some of the stuff, and I'd be thinking, let's just move on from this, So,
well, I think if they're focused on the right thing, and that's the county's benefit. If you noticed how quickly they moved through Pat Hankins. Pat came in, he had sold some things he didn't need. He needed some things in replacement. I mean, that's what we should be doing.
Right.
And so that was pretty much cut and dry.
And then we got to the issue about.
Well, he showed leadership right there
Right.
by what he did.
Yes,
Plain and simple.
absolutely.
He walked in, he took charge, made decisions, and made it
He
happen.
had
There
already
were-
done his homework. He had talked to
Right.
the appropriate people ahead of time.
And there were issues that throughout the meeting that became more and more difficult to deal with because there were 21, well, there were 20 there that night, but 21 commissioners, and all 21 kind of had a different experience or opinion on those issues. So to see somebody who was capable of standing up, speaking the issues, sitting back down, and I was just really inspired by that.
Thank
So,
you.
Woody, do you have any more questions for Wendy this morning about the county commission meeting? We hope to again have Wendy on the show, so you'll have an opportunity in the future to hopefully you'll consent to coming back. We've not been too mean
Well,
to her
I'm
this
hoping,
morning.
now I'll tell you right now for me, I'm hoping that you and I can work together. I'm hoping you'll be back. I'm hoping you will help with what I'm trying to do with the community. I'm trying to help the community.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm wanting us to go, I don't want you to be on the same side of the issue,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but I want
absolutely.
you to go to the meeting and I want you to go represent your side.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's different from mine. Show up. Then you're allowed to complain. Otherwise, I've said just shut up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you gave up your
Absolutely.
right. There is a responsibility. And see, it started over. Well, you mean I can't make a decision on this because I didn't vote last election? Yes. You have a right to vote. And you have a responsibility to vote. And just like the article in yesterday's paper from the guest columnist, being a citizen is not easy.
It is not. It is not.
And we have all gotten lazy. We have all gotten complacent. We have all said, well, the government knows what's better for us than I do.
Right.
You know, and that's where we made our mistake. And our second one mistake was people who bucked that thought process, we label them as stupid and idiots and, oh, they're just out there.
Right. And I think, a lot of people have voiced concerns, and I know that there's a business in town, and I'll use this as a sort of a closing, why I think there's a certain mindset. There's a business in town that objected to the fire department coming in and taking pictures of everything in their business. The fire department is required to have little diagrams of every business, particularly businesses that store anything that's flammable, etc.
Understandable.
So the fire chief came with a person, I don't know if he came, but somebody came with a person with a camera, and they wanted to take pictures of every nook and cranny of your business. Well, this particular business, knowing that it wasn't a requirement per se that there be photographs, said, no, I'd rather not have the inside of my whole business office and everything on somebody's web somewhere. I'd just go ahead and do the little rough sketch, because that's what's required.
Right.
Well, this business owner got a letter from the fire chief saying, this is to memorialize, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is to memorialize your refusal to have pictures. I want you to put you on official notice that not having pictures of your business may impede our ability to put out a fire in your building, and report for building. Yeah.
Well, you know what, and my
Yeah.
comment to that would be, look, if you're so stupid you don't know how to put out a fire because you don't know what this corner looks like, then maybe you don't need to be a fireman. I'm not being smart,
Right.
but at some point we have to be realistic. And even though it's our neighbor and our good friend or our brother or whatever,
Right.
if you don't have what it takes to do the job, you don't need to be there.
Right. And a rough sketch is certainly,
Enough.
yeah, and say, and in that back corner right there, the northwest corner, I keep, propane, whatever, I store propane. So,
Right.
yes, and yes, I do have a copy of that letter, so I'm not just speaking on gossip.
I wouldn't think that you.
When you roll up, you're not going to have to worry about the corners in my building because it's on fire.
Well, and we're going to close with Bill
Okay.
Jones' comment this morning, Woody. If you're ready for us over there, he says, please make Wendy a regular guest. She was a great guest. How about Wendy Wednesdays?
Oh.
So, on that
Wendy
note,
for county mayor.
Wendy.
we are Greeneville Today with Woody J and Mary
Thank
Hayes.
you.
We're so glad you tuned in this morning. We want to put a special thank you out there to Wendy Hankins for joining us, taking time out of her busy schedule to come and join us. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm and stay safe.
And we'll see you Monday morning.